all thank the founders of this roundtable for a timely intervention in a matter that really concerns the global community and that concerns our lives. And it is also holding in Rivers State, part of the Niger Delta region, where we all have the awareness about the issue of environmental degradation, human activities and injustice in addressing the damages from the activities, that is anthropogenic area related to gas emissions, which comes mostly from the oil and gas sector. Like the Mosul man told us, it is something to be, at least to be excited about, that we are now shifting our discussion from just CO2 emissions to methane emissions. Methane emission has actually given us, it's not well focused on in previous debates. And methane emission is the most critical aspect of the negative impact of oil and gas exploration in this Niger Delta region. So, but methane itself is not all that harmful, except when it has interface with some of the other substances. When they become excessive in the environment. So methane, when it becomes excessive, has over 80 times impact on what we call the global warming potency. The potency is 80 times, which means that it's something to really worry about. As African leading oil producer, Nigeria needs to worry about the trend of methane emission, which comes from oil and gas. And moreover, with being a global, player in the world alliances for methane, methane reduction, there is a need for us to look at how Nigeria has gone far in bringing down emissions. So it has gone into alliance during the COP 28, and it's part of those who have made commitment to fund emission reduction by $1 billion fund. Therefore, it is important to look at how Nigeria ranks and the trend of its emission participation. Nigeria ranked among the 10 global most the biggest polluters in terms of methane emission in the world. And this is not an enviable position. 50% of the global emissions around the world are caused, especially from methane sources, are caused by this particular group of nations, which Nigeria belongs to. And the trend of the emission, we want to study it from 1850 to the present day. So, taking a look at that, we noticed that from 1850 to 1950, the trend had been a little bit low because naturally Nigeria didn't have independence and the oil was not yet discovered. And we were operating a very clean, a greener environment by then. But at least the emission around this time was between 0.3 to 0.4 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per capita per capita production. Given this trend, by 1950 to 1960, we discovered that there is an increase in trend of the emission of methane. And this was standing at around 0.7 tons of CO2 equivalent. Then from 1960 to 2000, it was still up, but it peaked from 2020 to 2020, it peaked around that time and dropped by 2000 to 2020. At this time, the methane emission rapidly fell below the global average. Before, Nigeria was lying below the global average, and then it rose above the global average from that above 1960 to 2000. Then we started dropping from 2000 to 2020. And from 2021, it dropped to 1 ton, one ton CO2 emission equivalent. So we could see that the dropping in the emission rate, one can say that it is associated with efforts being made by the global community and Nigerians. So with this drop, at least there is hope that activities by the authorities of this country are really yielding dividends.
Thank you for. I'm going to come to Dr. Musa because you are from NESRA, right? Good. You heard the foundational speech that Paul has given. Your agency, NESRA, what are they doing at the moment? Because Nigeria has already committed to reduction in methane levels. And at the same time, I saw a context of this project where there's a reflection on the emphasis of the country in the economic recovery and growth plan, where Nigeria is targeting, gas as one of its main sources of income. What seems quite not balancing. Can you speak to me and this audience what your agency is doing in terms of, regulations?
Thank you very much. The environment does not belong to regulators entirely. It's our environment. The World Commission on Environment, what was called the Brundtland Commission, discussed extensively on what we generally call sustainable development, which is anchored on the tripod of economic, social, and environmental. Which means we will not get it right at any time if we decide to pursue economy at the expense of environment or pursue environment at the expense of social lives. They must all work together, properly knit together for everyone to get it right. Government position is to create awareness because some of us, even our parents in the village, our young ones, may not know very well. Government position is to create awareness and go to multilateral, forums like the World Commissions on Environment, different, meetings, international conventions, treaties, and all that, and subscribe to good environmental practice. Now, then we can domesticate locally here. What is good environment? Good environment is not that is devoid of pollution, which means non-pollution to the development of good air, clean atmosphere, non-polluted water, non-polluted land. And those are the various regulations that the agency have enacted, put in place, pursuant to ensuring that those treaties, those conventions that government has subscribed to at international scene are domesticated and enforced locally in Nigeria. As I was doing the presentation earlier, we talked about regulations on sanitation and waste control. And mind you, before I delve too deep on government, we need to also segment it. Environment is not in the exclusive list. It's in the concurrent list. So I am from the federal angle. I legislate from the federal angle. I enforce from the federal angle. We also have the state authority, who are also very big players in the environment, discourse. And we also have the local government. As a matter of fact, methane control, methane abatement, even methane production starts locally from anthropogenic activities majorly and should be controlled locally first before it gets even to the local, to the state level and federal level. The federal level is to put a cap. We set minimum standard and we expect states and the local government to set even more stringent standard, such that if you have met the local government standard, you have met the state standard, invariably you will have met the national or the federal standard. That is what we set. And where we see gap, lacks that need to be covered up, we step in almost immediately and say these are the national regulations that need to be followed, that need to be pursued. If you are not following this line, we can step in and begin to do something along that line. For example, in a bid to forestall indiscriminate waste dump, and control particularly of plastic waste for the environment and other industrial waste, we came up with the ETR, the extended producer responsibilities, where major players, major manufacturers of all PET bottles, not to the likes of, I just saw this water for the first time, the Revive water. I don't know Revive water. It's not the registered one with us, but it's water, it's not water to be drinking. I'm talking of major players, major food and beverages players. I don't want to start mentioning them as if I'm doing advert for them. The major players, food and beverages that are into, use of PET as a packaging material, where we have brought them all together. And you see these boys picking all these things on the road. They pick all sorts, regardless of where they make. They pick all. They are not picking for fun. There's an ultimate receiver, and the money comes from the ultimate receiver. You might pick, you see the collector, receive it, give it to the recycler. The recycler also receives who is not the end user of that PET bottles and sent to a factory, a facility where it is recycled and turned into some other product, some other value. That particular facility is one that's organized at the federal level that receive such material, you see them picking everywhere and turn into something, a good resource for us. That is the arms that the federal government are coming to ensure that put together we reduce open money particularly, and we ensure that things that should have gone to the dump site have become a scale at the dump site and reduced, at the various, levels. That is where we are coming from the federal.
Okay, thank you very much. I will go to. Can you just clap for us? Yes. Thank you very much. That's how we're going to keep the audience active and also, participate by listening first. The time is going to come, like I said before, I'll bring you in for you to have your own say and contribute your question. Now, I'm going to turn to you, Dr. Oswald. You are the director of livestock in the River State Ministry of Agriculture. He has mentioned federal level action, state level action, local government level action. At the state level, what is the situation? If I ask you about the issue of the strengths and weaknesses of existing policies and regulations governing methane emissions, is there anything like that? Any regulation at the moment? What are the extant situations that we have right now?
All right. Thank you for that question. First of all, I want to appreciate the organizers of this forum. I want to note something. One, because of the importance of agriculture as far as this exercise is concerned, and because we say about 45% of methane is actually coming from agricultural activities, I expected more persons, more participants, more stakeholders from the agri sector as far as this workshop is concerned. So maybe the organizers should look at that area. I expected to see people from other states, especially in agriculture, in livestock, for instance, having to participate in this colloquium. Then two, I also observed that at certain points in our discussions, we're talking about cows. please note, let's use the proper terminology. Cows actually refers to female cattle. So if you ask me, I would prefer we use the word cattle. So we generalize what we're dealing with. Now, you remember that Nigeria is a signatory to the Global Methane Pledge. And of course, we have a nationally determined contribution target, about 22 of them, where we're talking about recovering 50% of methane recovered from landfills by 2030. We talked about reducing open burning and of waste by 50% by 2030. We talked about reducing 30% of emission intensity in agriculture sector by 2030, and all that. There are about 22 of these targets, nationally determined targets. Of course, we also have an action plan for this. This is in consonance with other laws that Nigeria is also a signatory to. Now, we also have, like we have our colleague here from Niger, we have other agencies. We have the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. We have it replicated at the state levels. So we have agencies in place, we have laws in place. As a matter of fact, let's go particular. In River State, we also have, recently, we have the River State Open Grazing Prohibition Law. And when we're looking at methane, abatement, especially when it comes to livestock, and we're looking at grazing cattle and all that, this law becomes expedient because we're trying to confine these animals to a particular area so they don't go about, and in the process, they are also defecating and adding to the methane in the environment. So we actually have laws. Now, what are the strengths we have? The strengths are that, one, we have this gathering of intellectuals sitting down to discuss this issue. And I can assure you that the awareness is on the increase as far as this issue is concerned. It's a strength we have. And people are into various agricultural activities. People are in various value chains of agriculture. And we talked about rice production, cattle production, pig production, and all that. These are value chains. And people are going into all these areas. It is also a strength. Let me also tell us that we have laws, like we enumerated. It is for us to implement these laws and ensure that we abate this methane in the environment. However, we have major weaknesses. What are the weaknesses we have? One, it is the enforcement. The laws we have, how well are we implementing these laws? Do we have agencies like Niger that are ready to pick up these laws and ensure that our people comply to these laws to the letter? That's what matters. Those are the weaknesses we have. So we have gaps in these areas and we need to fill in these gaps. So this discussion becomes very important, looking at the strengths we have and then these weaknesses, and then we can fill in the gap. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we put our hands together? I think I like what is going on. Let me just say this before we go further. This roundtable is an opportunity for us. It's a data gathering roundtable. Just have that at the back of your mind. Whether you are sitting here or you're there, if you have relevant information or data, we are going to, harness and put together to come up with something that at the end of the day you'll be proud that you were part of it. We will need that information. I'll come to that. Now, I'm coming to you, Engineer Monday Williams. You've heard what Dr. Boswell has said. He has painted a picture of what is existing at the moment at the state level. There are laws, there are policies that are existing. But I understand very well that Nigeria has the issue of Nigeria is not about laws. Let's just be very clear about it. Nigeria has very good, beautiful laws, policies in place. We gather the best brains like what we are doing here, and then we get to the point of implementation. There is a gap in implementation. Once there is a gap in policy implementation, the effectiveness of that policy is always an issue. I'm bringing you in here now. How do we address it, Engineer William? Issue of the gap in the policies and laws that we have available that Dr. Boswell just mentioned now.
Thank you for your question. I want to say that the gap is too much, which we need to be up and doing my brother here was talking, and he made mention that what they are doing in terms of the implementation of the policies are in levels, from the community level to local government level to the state level. That is to say that everybody is what is involved. The government do generate good policies, but the implementation is always the case. One of the ways by which the government is finding it, if not impossible, but extremely difficult to implement the policy is because of how our people behave, how conservative they are. This thing that we are talking, as I said before now, it is very, very important issue that we need to tackle with all amount of effort because of the negative impact that this thing has on our society. Gas emission is not something that we should play with. Gas emission is not something that we should play with. Why am I saying so? When you are handling gas, it's not something that you can see with your naked eyes. It's not something you can, just say, let me pick it from here and keep it somewhere. It is something that we need to carry out every instruction given by the government agency. So now, coming back to your question, if government says that when somebody is maybe on the motor park in the vehicle, when you are buying banana, after eating your banana, don't throw that pills anyhow. Don't drop it on the floor. Look for waste basket. Put it so that someone can come from environmental agency and pick it and dispose that thing properly. But you realize that our people will still eat that thing and discard it anywhere. And that is a problem. Because government has known the implication of disposing that thing anywhere. As this program is all about. This program is all about us tackling the one that is within us. Tackling the emission that is within us. We should forget about the one that is led by the oil companies. We should tackle that one first. So you realize that already government said, has given an instruction, which is a good policy. When you use, most especially, biodegradable material, don't dispose it anyhow. But you will still see our people discarding that instruction given by the government, having government known the implication of it, and still do anyhow. And peradventure, if somebody sees him or her doing such, and going towards him and ask him, why are you doing that? That which you have done is not proper. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Before you know, they will start attacking you. That is one of the issues that we are having, which we need to tackle. The attitude of our people towards a clean environment.
Okay, thank you so much. I bring back to you now, Dr. Clara. I was in the office, some days ago. There is a tool that you gave to me, and it's very valuable. I know how you have been involved in climate smart farming. You are dealing with farmers, grassroots farmers. And when we talk about anthropogenic sources, human, genic, from. So it's a great word that has those two connotations. Now, you have been dealing with the farmers. You've trained them on climate smart farming. He just mentioned something, attitude of the local person. Not just the local person, maybe I will come back to you, maybe we may extend it. You have talked about the local person, but we are going to also focus on the policy formulators. There is a gap there too. So now, Doc, can you speak to some of those issues about climate smart farming, the little things that you've been able to put together? There's a recent training that you did for farmers across this area. What is it really all about? Climate smart farming. I think if we focus on it, we'll be able to tackle this issue of methane abatement at that level.
All right, thank you very much. I think I'll start my little contribution from the speaker by my side, his contribution, asking of where are the agricultural people here. Because when we talk of anthropogenic sources, we can't overemphasize the place of agriculture. You can't overemphasize it. And unfortunately, in most things we do, we still overlook these local people. It may interest you to know that agricultural system in Nigeria, the key labor force in the agricultural sector in Nigeria is from the rural people, these local people. More than 80% of the food that we consume comes from them. And when we make these laws and form these policies, we don't get to involve them. That is where our problem starts. My brother here talked about non-implementation of policies. Yes, if you critically look at it, you see that even the process of formulating these policies are not inclusive. Most of the process of formulation starts from the top. The needs and interests of these local people are not addressed. Currently, I'm working on a framework. I'm an award fellow. I'm working on a framework on how to track gender responsiveness. How do we track the implementation of the gender commitments in all the climate change related policies in Nigeria? It's a sponsored work, and we are moving with it. I thank God for the cooperation of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. So we have to address these elementary issues first. Trying to bring in, making our processes, our actions, everything we are doing inclusive. You cannot solve a problem without involving the key victims of the problem. The rural people are key victims in most of these things we say. You cannot talk about agriculture without them. Yet, when we do things, we keep them by the side. Going back to his question, asking on the climate smart agriculture, that's my area. My background is agricultural extension, and my research interest area is climate smart agriculture. I research on that, and I don't do research only. I also engage fully in research uptake. I do research, and I ensure that my research outcomes, they are mainstreamed into policy and uptake. If you go to our universities today, you will see that even the methane we are talking about, there's a lot of research that has been done on them. There's a lot of wonderful outcomes. They are there in the shelves dying. We are not using them. We have solutions. We are talking about cattle enteric fermentation, bringing out methane. Believe me, come to the university. You will see research output to address these things, but we are not using them. So personally, I take it up that when I do any research, I ensure that that research outcome is mainstream. So the training we have on climate smart agriculture, what we are trying to do is to strengthen farmers' climate resilience. Those areas we have seen that are environmentally friendly, those practices that they can use to make more yield, increase their yield, while maintaining a friendly environment, we teach them. These farmers, they know they're experiencing this climate change, and thank God we're talking about methane today, because we know that even though methane is not so much present in the atmosphere like CO2, then it has very high global warming power, more than even CO2. So these farmers are experiencing these problems. Many of them are losing their farms. Many of them are being subjected to abject poverty because when they plant, they follow the weather signal and plant, and the weather doesn't give them what it's supposed to give them. You see that some of them, even after planting, the rainy season has started. It happened last year too. The rainy season has started. After planting, the rain stops, and their crops dries up. These are, you can imagine somebody who has planted like 10 plots of land, investing his or her resources. So what we do is we try to train them. What we did last month is a sponsored project. I'm running a project that is sponsored by Adaptation Research President. So what we do is on gender anyway, it's mainly on women. We train them on how they can convert this their farm waste into biochar. Instead of burning it, contributing to climate change, we train them on turning it into biochar, which they use to treat their soil. So we train them on that, and we also notice that many of them, they don't have access to weather information. We talk, NIMET is there, generating this weather information. I think this year they have released the annual seasonal information. These people don't have access to it. So we synergize with NIMET, and we link these rural women in Rivers State and in Enugu State to NIMET. Right now, they receive daily information on weather, and they are using it for their farming practices. I think I will stop here.
Yes, thank you. I think we can do better. Yes. I'll come to you. Let me finish it. I also have a lot of questions. I know when I give you the audience, we may not leave here now. There's a time, just give me a little space. You have a lot, you are loaded. Honorable. Yes. Thank you, Doc. You know, when you were talking about having awareness, climate smart awareness, I have a very bad experience, in rice cultivation. I bought this seed. Of course, they told me it were climate resilient seeds from Gamma seed. I bought it from KB State, and they brought it. I planted this seed based on the information that was predicted, but there was no rain. These seeds were on the ground, and then I had an issue of almost 10 hectares where I already planted these seeds. There was no growth. And to be honest with you, it was a big challenge battling with wheat. If you have wheat inside your rice farm, and at a point you cannot even plant, I lost like 10 hectares, which I already done. And the whole farm was about, I think they were being 17 hectares. So if you minus 10 from 17, you know what a great loss. These are some of the challenges that farmers face on a daily basis. I'm trying to relate my own practical experience to what we're saying. It's a severe thing. So I'm talking because I know that what she's saying is real and it's a fact. Now, Prof, I'm going to come to you. She made mention of, uptake of research. I also have been in a university and I've read and I've done researches. I know what is there. You go to the graduate school library, you will see archives. Researches that students have produced, they are dumped there, doing nothing. Now, it takes me to commercialization of research findings. That's where we're going to head now. What, specific innovative technological solutions do you see? You've been here for a while, and I know, I checked you online, Prof, you are very extensive. You may sit here quietly and looking at your works have gone to places. Yes, I use your Google, Google Scholar. Yes, I did, I searched. So I've seen some of your publications, they are quite extensive. Let's delve deep now. Let's take a deep dive into innovative technological solutions. What can you recommend for methane capture and abatement, considering their feasibility and scalability within the Nigerian context?
Thank you very much for that question. I think some of them have been mentioned in this discourse today, and I can also expatiate on the existing ones. But before then, we cannot rule out the impact of policy. Even though you say policies are so many and they are not being in place. Without the adequate and correct policies, there wouldn't be a framework for funding to come and even impact on whatever technology that you have. So we actually have to, gear into whatever we are doing. We must gear into some policies. Policies surrounding SDGs, climate action, climate change adaptation. Even the CSA we are talking about is because there are policies from the United Nations that are talking about the need to take climate action and build resilience of farmers, build resilience of even every technology that we have. Now we must think about zero emission to the extent that the power supply that we have in our homes now, they are going into zero emission level. As NEPA or electricity power authorities in Nigeria are increasing the tariffs, you can see that one of the technologies that is taking us to lower emissions is use of solar panels. Use of solar panels come as one of the solutions that will reduce the emissions from methane and from other sources that depend on the use of crude oil and that means that the ones that can help us, that can generate greenhouse gas emissions. So sequestration efforts are actually required. And this sequestration efforts is a very complex area. It involves a lot of research that cut across different fields. We cannot say it is what agricultural people will do. Engineering have a role to do in that, designing technologies that are eco-friendly, designing tools that would not cause damage to the environment. And then I look at one area that we talk about, like the ruminants. They emit a lot of methane. That is the livestock sector. That livestock sector we can think about technology that will hammer on the nature of the pastures that they take. It is what you take that you bring out. You cannot eat fufu. The feces of somebody who ate fufu is different from the feces of somebody who ate meat. The smell are different. So this means that scientists will have to think about what type of pasture will enable cattle and other ruminants to emit less methane. Some people are already doing that research, but we need to upscale that research and also think of other ones. Then we also have to think about how do we reduce the emission devices? How do we generate devices that will reduce emissions even in refinery? Because we can see that refineries are also very big corporates in doing this. So one of the ways is by the devices that we design in order to reduce the emission from the oil and gas systems, whether in the refinery or even in the distribution network. How do we reduce the emissions from our transport sources? Because these are corporates too. The mode of transport that we use. Nigeria, for instance, is depending so much on vehicles that have been used for more than 20 years abroad, and then they import these things. If you go to some countries like South Africa and some neighboring African countries, I don't want to talk about outside Africa, they don't use what we call Belgian cars. They don't use them. Instead they attract investors who have to come and build their plants in their country. And they have mechanism for each person who wants to buy a car to have a funding facility that will enable you pay. And then almost everybody drives a new car. When this type of policy is in place, it can also help one to bring down the emission level from the transport sector. The kind of cooking stove that we use is somewhere to visit. Many people in Nigeria are still dwelling on the use of firewood as a source of energy for cooking at home. The improved version is use of charcoal, which is also emitting so much carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions. So we need technologies that will improve the level of emission from stove that we design. By even designing the ones that use these gas, methane-based ones, at least it reduces dependency, the direct flaring of gas, methane into the atmosphere. So when we have such a school of technologies, our veterinary tertiary institutions that are in vocational technical areas, they begin to design certain technologies that will speak to those areas that bring about our emissions. Then we can be thinking, like some of the fridges that we have, their sources. The fertilizers that we use, their sources of material. So how can we utilize the type of organic fertilizer that will not bring so much methane emission into the surrounding? Then how do we also go about reducing our own consumption of changing lifestyle in terms of depending so much on livestock, like cattle eating beef too much. And you see, people are moving towards more sustainable kind of protein sources. For instance, insects are now being used as sources of protein. Because these insects, at least, they don't make use of too much of the grain, and then they don't cause emission. So when you leave this pattern of consumption, you are most likely to help even reduce the dependency on generating methane that comes from the livestock sector. These are various ways we can also do it. And then some people have also talked about installing emission control devices, leak detection and repair of certain devices in the system of production of oil and gas, so that we can have minimal emissions in the atmosphere. And one way of incentivizing these technologies, like I said, there has been a lacuna in terms of what the research is doing, what the people actually need in the society, and then even the awareness about what technology are available. So many technologies are available on the shelves, like it has been said. And we now need incentives like patenting, licensing, and all this to enable researchers to begin to see money. Funding should begin to go into sciences and technology, service students, technology-driven lecturers who are researching in the area. People need incentives by way of getting money out of what they do, not just research for research purpose. In this modern era now, most of the researchers in other places are the richest people because they can access big funds, thousands, millions of dollars to generate certain solutions. So, but when you are here in Nigeria, you use about 3-5 years designing a technology and you have no funding for it, that can decrease the motivation to come up with innovative solutions. So we need to encourage research, not by mouth, but by funding. And funding research that are actually, heading towards reducing the problem of abatement of methane will be very good. And this type of research can be multidisciplinary. It does not have to be only in engineering. Every system, from agriculture, from architecture, even architecture, the way they design homes can also help or reduce or exacerbate the methane emission. So we have a lot of roles, both as policymakers, as technicians, and all. There are a lot of things to do, but for the time purpose, let me just stop this.
I'm giving you the microphone ahead. When you did your initial presentation, I was like, okay, is he giving another presentation? This is the time now. I will return you back to that your presentation. You said so much in a little time. You spoke like an insider. Now, as an offshoot from what Prof said, because I remember from the beginning at the keynote address, when Mr. Adam was talking, what the high point of his presentation to me was when they captured the SDN, how do you call it, methane tracker. Yes, it's an innovative technology. I know SDN for that because they had a gas flare tracker before. I used to go there to source for data while I was with Nagon. So when they mentioned that thing, I was alerted because I understand what that technology is going to do. That is one. You've listened to what we have said at so many levels now. I'm bringing you in because you are working in an agency that has access to various methane emission sources. And as a government regulator at that level, I want to ask you, what are some of the economic implications that they should be running through your mind? Okay, we mentioned a whole lot of it. Before you now go and start talking to policymakers, design environmental friendly policy that will support industrialists who are willing to invest, or persons, bankers, or whosoever is funding, like Prof is talking about funding. What can you see, in issues of economic implication for transitioning into methane abatement strategies and tools and technology that you have seen from various sources? I don't know, or you can add to what Prof has said. Let's take it from there. You can rise up. I've said so many things, but just see how you can make the best out of it.
Thank you very much. We will not be talking of economic implication. Economic benefits. What will be the economic benefits of transiting to a situation of low methane emission, or transiting to a situation of maintaining the atmosphere that's within permissible limits? That will bring us to a point where we need to discuss the use of technology, as Prof has stressed. Use of technology that does not undermine environmental quality. Which means technology you are bringing into the country should be such that it is environment friendly. Technology that will not emit at such obnoxious level that we cannot curtail. And that also leads to the methane tracking discourse that I heard earlier. It's good to have a system that can track methane presence in an environment. But that system is also very transient because methane is a very light gas and it's always on the move. If you track it here right now and track it in 5 minutes time, you won't get the same volume, except it is produced, except it is actually the source and is produced at that same rate. Because it's a light gas, it's a fleeting gas, and it moves also very fast. That will also mean that the meteorologists will have to tell us the direction of wind sometimes. Where are we heading towards? What is the capacity of this equipment to generate, and what will be the direction of wind? At that time, if we have to be tracking methane, because we'll be heading towards a direction. I think that will be an angle to it. But there's so much good, so much economy in ensuring that we work with equipment that are environment friendly. That is why in one of our regulations, what we call the EEE regulation, the Electrical and Electronic Equipment Regulations, talks about bringing in equipment that are environment friendly. Prof talked about use of used vehicles, what we call tokumbo in this country. Used equipment, used vehicles are not banned items in Nigeria, except the one I would call the one that are very hazardous, immediately hazardous to our environment, like used refrigerators or used air conditioners that contain CFC in the gas. If you build equipment and does not contain CFC, it's not a banned item in this country. But such equipment you are bringing into the country must be one that is tested functional. Because we know how our people behave. They go to other parts of the world and say, please pack all together, whether working or not working. Now, I know my people, they will buy them. You know, we don't want such a case. We want, you can bring in used ones, we test it, and if it's working, it's accepted. When we do the functionality test at the port, it can come to the country. But when you have packed all together, whether good or bad, whether good or bad, bring it here, or we'll fix it here. Nigeria is not a fixing ground for dead equipment. The one we call waste or WEEE, the waste electrical and electrical equipment. This is not a fixing ground for it. As a matter of fact, the cost of recycling and fixing it has been paid to the original manufacturers already. It's also already captured in the sale of the equipment, which we are not part of. So when you bring in equipment that are functional, good, you know, we accept it. And there's so much economy. Why do people want to go for used items? That's what we should look at. Why can't we go for the new ones? Sometimes the cost of the new ones are so astronomical that we cannot afford it. Even industries want to produce equipment, they go for some used ones. You know, if you look at the lifespan of equipment, because no equipment has, is produced to live forever. Even this microphone has a lifespan. If you look at the lifespan of equipment, and you look at the calculations, okay, this equipment is programmed to have 20 years lifespan, but it has spent 10 years before you purchased it. You still have 15 years to work with. Within these 15 years, what will I make of it? Because as the equipment gets older, the capacity of function also depreciates. It's not at the same rate. So when you work out the economy of it and you think you'll be making some gain because the initial cost of acquiring it, you want to quickly acquire that one first. So people start with such used equipment and progress to new equipment. Good economy. But if you just want to keep bringing in the dead ones, and make Nigeria a dumping ground for waste, bad one, because that waste will not return back to the country of origin because it is used there. If you want to return waste, we need to talk about different conventions, like the Basel Convention, if it's classified as hazardous material, or the PRC Convention, the Prior Consent Convention. They give to 10 different countries who want to take waste across the country, please grant us permission, and you know the procedure, it could last for so many years. So the best thing is for us to ensure that we bring in equipment, one, that is environment friendly, two, that equipment whose emission is quite minimal. You know, there are some very good equipment that can capture every emission from factory level. As it's coming out, all the emissions are captured. Hazardous, good or bad, all captured and can be so separated and managed locally. So as much as possible, we bring in equipment that can confine all our emissions to manageable levels. That is how to reduce, what goes into the atmosphere. Very good economy, because sometimes we go to facilities to do inspections and we look at what they have, and we tell them this equipment is meeting your purpose for now. It's not just equipment. Please begin to think of how to wind up your equipment and bring it in more environment-friendly equipment, particularly in the cement industry. When we go there, we look at the equipment and we look at the case. We look at the volume of waste, of dust. in proper precision equipment, you won't have this level of dust. And we know what you can do. The equipment you can get to reduce this emission that you have in here, because it's a particulate. The much they capture, so much is also emitted into the atmosphere. We can tell them this equipment, though it's meeting your need at the moment, but we think there's a need for you to upgrade it so that the level of emission you have in here can be reduced. Some of them, when they apply for air quality permits, because of the nature of equipment they're using, we want to sometimes charge them very high. Because when we need to put this more positive measure, because of their equipment, they want to see how they can acquire a more environment-friendly equipment. That's the part we talked about, the economy of it. And then talked about swimming area, about agriculturists, and how they can be part of this cost values, which is very good. The market people, the market women, particularly biodegradable market women, vegetable marketers, tomato, all this one. Sometimes you want to pass through market here, and you see some lumps of pawpaw, very, very overripe. About 50 of them on the table. You know they cannot finish this today. It's already a waste. You already seen it. And where will those pawpaw go to? They get rotten and they adopt. How is it managed? No way. But we have a foundation. When I was in my office, we have a foundation, MTN foundation there. They go to market, they have this food, they collect all the biodegradables. Take them to their small cottage recycling plant, dose it with some organic item, and produce inorganic fertilizer with it from all this market biodegradables. Because if all these items are not received from the market and they go to the dump site, we have one generation of methane from gases like this. When they are so taken out, contained, turned into other resource, fertilizer, which everybody needs, and same organic fertilizer, it just does it becomes 50-50, half organic, half inorganic, and most of us actually want it that way. That's another approach to it. Economy of managing our waste, turning it to wealth or resource, that is good for farmers and long run for the economy. That is another very big approach to extracting the economy of methane release or methane production in management. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the next phase now. Let's deal with policy. You have said a lot, we have said a lot, from the beginning of the said a lot. We know that these policies exist. Now we're tackling the options, policy options. Dr. Godswin, you are in the Ministry of Livestock. What policy options can you recommend? Can you suggest? Tie those policies to agencies. Let's look at next action. I'm giving you the mic now.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate my sister here for teaching those women smart agriculture. Please, next time, collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture. We're interested in what you're doing. At the moment, okay, with ADP, please, at the mainstream in the ministry, we may not have such data. Now in Rivers State, we are trying to get data on farmers in the various categories for purpose of planning, policies, and all that. So we would like to partner with you, please. Thank you. And then we're looking at policy frameworks and how to strengthen them to incentivize the industry. When you're looking at, we say agriculture, methane from agriculture is about 35%, from energy is about 35%, that's looking at oil and gas, and then from waste is about 20%. So if you want to speak to each of these situations, you'll be looking at, for energy, for instance, let's start with energy, oil and gas. There is a petroleum industry law that is in place, and that's one measure, one policy that can help us to regulate what happens at the industry, especially in the oil and gas. And then when you're looking at agriculture, for instance, you'll be looking at environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment will tell you, this agricultural venture I want to go into, what is the impact on the environment? For instance, you want to look at cattle production. How does it impact on the environment? Those are the policies you need to look at, and then you strengthen these policies and ensure that for every agricultural venture somebody wants to go into, there is an EIA that is done on that venture, and so you can say, this is the impact you're going to have on the environment, and this is the abatement measures you're supposed to take. When we do that, then we will be encouraging these industries to actually do the right thing as far as methane abatement is concerned. From West, of course, we know there are so many laws, and like Israel was talking about here, we have those policies that are already in place. Our people know about these policies, but most times it is implementing it that's the problem. And sometimes when you have some of these agencies, maybe the amount of money they charge to do an environmental impact assessment is something that can scare people. So an interministerial collaboration becomes important so that we look at the policies and then Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Health, we can look at, okay, if we have these people who are doing this venture, what is the impact it is going to have on the environment? And so if we have a collaborative effort that way, as much as we're encouraging people to go into agriculture, because that's the only way forward, we can also minimize the impact of that venture on the environment. So if we strengthen these policies, I'm sure we'll be able to incentivize these industries to adopt measures that will bring about methane abatement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Clara, next to you, because I want to hear from you. You have been dealing with these local community persons and all of that. Still on policy options. That's where we are now. Now, I want to ask you, in terms of local farmers, you work with them, you've seen, you must have had an idea, if I have an extra grant, I'll be able to do this and that. What policy options can you suggest that right from here, the next step, the next line of action would be considering those local persons, using them as your knowledge base? Speak to us on that area. Policy options that will be inclusive. You mentioned inclusivity. It is from that point that I'm taking on you on this question. How do you want us to include those rural persons you have been dealing with in issues of agricultural policy towards abatement of methane?
Okay, thank you very much. I will share my opinion on this, relating it to what we are discussing. If we look at the agricultural sector, the key areas that are responsible for this methane emission is rice production and the ruminant animal rearing, which cattle is key in them. And if we critically look at these areas, there are options that will even benefit the policymakers, the government, and even the local people. Policies that will address innovative and emerging areas. That when these things are done, the farmers will also experience increase in their production and the environment will be cleaner. For instance, if we look at the rice area, you know that most of the things that causes the emission of methane in rice production is when it's a flooded field. Right now, there are alternative ways. I don't know if you have heard of Kenya. Kenya, the American species of rice that can grow in upland dry areas. And there are also alternative ways to produce where we alternate wet and dry seasons. We don't allow the rice to stay throughout. These are areas that policies can look at. How do we channel more funds into this area? Because it will create more areas for investment. And this investment will benefit the rural people. Even in the cattle rearing too. We can think of how do we alternate their diet, that these things can reduce the microbial production that causes this methane emission. I was listening to a presentation. I was in Kigali some months ago, and somebody was presenting how we can use garlic, the garlic that we use to reduce this methane emission in cattle by 50%. So, what I'm trying to say is that our policies can look at actionable strategies that when these areas are, maybe when they are actually implemented, when these things are implemented, it will benefit the local people. Because anything that we do that will increase yield will benefit the local people. I don't know whether you're getting me.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Engineer Monde, in just a minute or two from your own ministry, what is the option?
Okay, my suggestion is that a government, which is the major player, one of the major players, should enact policies that will constrain or that will stop people from doing the things that are capable of affecting our environment. The process something about going into, there is that technology gap. Government should come up with a framework that our professionals in Nigeria should be trained and untrained, trained and be trained, so that there is that technology gap. A typical example is this. This gas flaring that we are talking about should be emitted, should be abated. Why am I saying so? There is a particular company that is in Akwa State called Sterling Global. What Sterling Global is doing is that they are using CNG in all their vehicles. And that is very good, very environmental friendly. You see, in all their vehicles, they are using CNG. CNG is compressed natural gas. So instead of them to use diesel in those big trucks, they are using CNG. And that is a good policy, which I am so much happy with the government of Akwa Ibom State, because we are looking closely to those people that are operating in that our area. It is something that other operators emulate. And if you are going by that, my brother was talking about designing. When a pipe is passing through your house, that pipe, when the maker was doing it, producing it, it has an expiring date. And when it exceeds that expiring date, that pipe is going to start wearing. And before you know, the pipe will be exploding. The pipe will leak. And some of them, they will be saying that maybe it's oil concrete or no. Not claiming that it is because of the fact that the pipe that is just passing through your house has been expired. So, government should strengthen the monetary aspect of the activities of those that are tapping oil in our state. So, I think if we go by that, it will assist. Another thing is sensitization. Sensitization. The ministries need to commit ourselves in going around sensitizing people on how to dispose their waste. I thank God for the governor of Akwa Ibom State because of his effort. The government of Akwa Ibom State is so much attached importance on how our waste is being disposed. That is what I was saying before now, that Akwa Ibom State was declared the clean state, the most clean state in all the federation in about how many times? 4 or 5 consecutive times. That comes as a result of a good government policy in place, which need to be strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we deserve better than that. We're going to move quickly. I will take very few questions. And who you are addressing the questions?
Okay, thank you. My name is Dr. Augustus Mbele. I want to appreciate the panelists. I just want to, this small, I want to add something that is almost left out. We're looking at agriculture, but there's something that was teaching, but now it's becoming a problem. Artisanal refining of oil. It generates so much problem in our environment. If I should ask 2 of us, everyone will say true. It's so disturbing. That aspect should be looked at also, because looking at methane abatement in the oil and gas sector, it has to go through the 3 levels: upstream, midstream, and downstream. That is in government. But those who do refine crude oil the other way do not go through these processes. And of course, there's a lot of what we call fugitive water emissions. Methane is one of them. So we should also look at that angle. I'm talking about what has been done before. Again, we might think nothing has been done. We migrated from the use of motorbikes to tricycles. Motorbikes are there are 2-stroke engines. They generate so much water emissions. But the keke we use now generates less. And of course, like our brother mentioned here, it is new, not Belgium, isn't it? Most of the keke we bring from new machines. 4-stroke engines. So unfortunately, we've not been doing emission tracking. If we had been doing that before, we know that from that transport angle, it has been going down. So all what I'm saying is, it is possible for us to key into present realities. Our environment is not isolated. It is an open system. How matter and energy can be transferred from. So if it's happening in Nigeria and Ghana is not taking responsibility, they'll feel the heat. Vis-a-vis. Now the last part is for government too. When they catch those who get this fear for artisanal refineries, what do they do? Arbitrary measures. Sorry, to all due respect to government. I'm also not the government. They take the tankers and they burn them. And they add more to the already heated environment. So government should also look at managing that policy to see how we can recycle what has been done halfway to what can be used instead of just throwing it away. So that's my own solution. Thank you very much.
I'll put on yourself. My question is to Dr. Woypito. In your opinion, what are the measures or actions you think should be in place to help government fully comply with the international agreement on methane abatement, for example, or reducing methane emissions?
All-inclusive team, all hands on deck. Because it's not only from one side, from the side of the government, from the side of the farmers, from the side of those of us who are here, policymakers and all that. And so, from the government, what do we need to do? The government needs to set the base. We're talking about methane abatement. We're looking at farming. That's my special area. What do we need to do as a government? In Rivers State, for instance, we have just built the Methane Abatement at Ugoshi, Rumene. And one of the facilities we have there is the waste treatment plant. So that ensures that whatever waste that is going to come out from the slaughtering of those animals, and I can assure you, we're going to slaughter 400 cattle per day, 1,500 sheep and goats per day. That's voluminous. So the blood from there, the waste, the horns, the skin, the hairs, and all that, there will be a waste treatment plant to take care of that. That's one way to abate both methane and other gases that comes along with it. That sets the pace for the private investors. So if we're going to set up a slaughterhouse at the moment, we can look at that standard and say, look, you must have a waste treatment plant. Gone are the days when people just slaughter and they channel it into a body of water, and we tell them it is wrong. We have even improved on that, and we are telling butchers or those who want to go into the business, you must provide a roof over the slab, because these days we have acid rain and all that, and while people are slaughtering and rain is falling, you can't stop them from walking. So it means that the rain will contaminate the meat that eventually goes to our tables. So one of the measures to put in place is to ensure that there is a roof over it. Now, let me give you a practical example. If you go to one farm, Lonefa simply means love never fails. The farm is located opposite Salvation Ministries. For those of us in Port Harcourt, there's a new building they have on the airport road. At Lonefa, it's a small farm, but they have a waste treatment plant, and from there, they generate biogas. So it's real, it's practical, it's something that can be done. Now, somebody here talked about breeding cattle such that, we bring in the breeds that generate less methane. And I say that's in the long term. In the short term, one of the measures we can put in place, just like I talked about garlic and other things, our feed, we need to look at feed formulation. There has to be standard as far as feed formulation is concerned to ensure that we don't generate so much methane as a result of the digestion of the feeds that we have produced. So these are some of the measures that we need to put in place. Let me remind us, in those days when we were small, our mothers, the chicken they were keeping, they used to use charcoal from the kitchen, isn't it, to sweep where the beds are lying, isn't it? And that's a disinfection. Whether you like it or not, that's simple disinfection. But these days, we're too busy, we're not doing all those things. So we have to buy all other expensive disinfectants. But these are some of the measures that we need to look at so that what we are generating from there, we can actually put it together. It's not only in cattle production. I can assure you, even in pig production, the waste from pigs can actually be used to generate biogas. And these are all measures. Sorry, I don't have much time, but I just have to chip in this. These are measures that we can put in, not what the government, I'm saying what the government has done, and then industry, key players in the industry can key into it and say, we want to set up a slaughter. What are the measures? What are the standards? What are the things we expect a slaughterhouse to have? But as individuals who are homestead farming, for instance, we're doing small scale backyard and all that. These are some of the measures that we need to put in place. Thank you very much.
I want to contribute towards the issue of non-implementation of policies and laws. And I want to say, as my colleague there said, it should be sensitization. Yes, but it shouldn't be a once attempt. Let it be something that is sustained from time to time. You keep carrying out that sensitization on the law. Take it to the grassroots. Let the people know this is a law that is in existence. Interpret it to them. Let them understand the implication of defaulting that law. And I believe that if it becomes a part and parcel of them, it will be an easy thing for them to implement it. Yes, we have those laws, but how many people are aware of it? So you can take it down to the very grassroots, make it an activity. We call them around, maybe call a town hall meeting, get the people informed. I believe when they are informed, they'll be able to take the right decisions. Thank you.
I want to confess to the fact that the panelists have done great work. And I feel very privileged to sit down here under the powerful influence of what you people have explained this afternoon. Thank you very much. I have great problems about law. We don't have problems with law, existence of law. We have problems with enforcement of law. Because sometimes the presence of the law may be too hot for the enforcers to enforce. Yes, it becomes a big problem. If we look at, say, do we have environmental law in Nigeria? You can say yes, because you want to hurriedly answer and sit down and take yourself away from problems. But what is the form of environmental laws we have in Nigeria? Let's start from the Constitution. Our Constitution, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, brings together very ambitious objectives. And all of them are called fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. And Chapter 2 of the Constitution is non-enforceable and is non-justiciable. The government simply expresses an intention of having a clean environment, so it has in mind of having an objective of a good environment. But how is good environment achieved? You will see that before Chapter 2 of the Constitution is enforced, they will say subject to availability of funds. So you cannot sue the government because your environment is polluted. You cannot. In the same place, it has very serious ambition for education. It says Nigerian government will provide good education for its populace. How do you define good education? Can you take government to court because you don't have schools in your environment? You cannot do it. So it is non-justiciable and non-enforceable, except in certain claims. In certain claims, they have changed non-enforceable provisions of their constitution to enforce it, to making them justiciable and enforceable. Now, what happens if a case is brought to your court, if you are a judge, for instance, and you go to the section of the Constitution and realize that this is non-justiciable? As a judge, what do? You quickly strike out that case or dismiss it and say, this case, in fact, this court does not have jurisdiction over this case, and that ends the matter. But if you take such a matter to a court in India, for instance, the judge will assume jurisdiction. Of course, you can only assume jurisdiction to hear a matter which you have knowledge to hear. If matters of environment is taken to a judge who has no business with environmental law, how will that judge begin to convert himself into a professor of environmental law to be able to arrogate to himself the knowledge to hear the case? It becomes a problem. So that's where we're coming from. And worse, if you're talking about the environment, you want to remember that very serious international approach started with the putting together of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that was in 1992. And when the lifespan of UNFCCC was coming to an end, because it had a lifespan, world leaders were looking for successor to UNFCCC. That is what brought about the Kyoto Agreement, or Kyoto Protocol. Yeah. And then when Kyoto Protocol was outliving its lifespan, they began to look for successor, and they came to the Paris Agreement. And whether you like it or not, each of these, whether the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or Kyoto Protocol, or Paris Agreement, each of them had something that was lagging. As a result of that, we started having this thing they call COP. It's important to know what COP means. When you are speaking, say COP 1, COP 2, COP 3. You need to go down so that everybody will be able to understand. It's not everybody who understands what COP means, apart from police COP. COP means Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties, that is heads of states of the different countries that are signatory to the agreement will come together to see how do we fare in this agreement. And then we also have, as an outcrop of Kyoto Agreement or Kyoto Protocol, we have the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a meeting that they will come together and that we should have some people that Madame represents also attend. But you know, capacity for such people to attend depends on their ability to understand what will be discussed. Because believe me, this matters, except you are an expert, it becomes a big problem. By the time they start going into full-fledged discussion on the matter, some heads of states would have gone to sleep. It's science. Once science comes in there. And it's very technical and abstract. It is only those who can understand. So let us talk about this. And so when you're talking about policies, the necessary man, I don't know how many of your officers are honest enough to be able to implement what is in the policy books. We have many policies on different aspects of the environment. But how many of them are transparent? Who monitors them? You go to a company, for instance, and you want to track their emission. For instance, ExxonMobil calls you to come and have tea. And then the quality of the tea can make you forget what you went there for. And yes, it's like going to government house to buy or something. And if it were like my former governor, who is the Senate president today, they will send someone to ask me, how did you come? Did you drive down? No, you flew down. Or how did you come here? Were you brought in? Were you chauffeured or you were brought down? If you were brought down, if a car, you drove in your car, they will ask the driver to turn into a safe place. And that safe place is in the back of the building. By the time you pick at what they load into your vehicle, you would have forgotten what you were doing. That's the truth, sir. Yes.
Wait, I'm
not telling you what you don't want to hear.
We are here for practical discussion. You do practical.
Off your mind.
Practical.
Off your mind. But it's true. Sometimes something is loaded into your car, and the shock absorber is created whether it can carry it or not. And what is there is something you have not seen in your life before. Nobody will tell you to start to keep quiet. Yes. So instead of having to load it, he said, they will send it through your mailbox. Whatever it means. So I'm talking about the transparency of the enforcers of policies here. Do they have the goodwill and the strength to stand up to say, this bottle of water is supposed to be this and that, and upon our analysis, this is not it. Okay? Because I know that we have officers, engineers from Ministry of Works that monitors road construction to be able to make it up to standard. But at the end of the day, the report they give will be very favorable to a very bad job that is done. And they keep quiet, so long as they'll be able to pay fees when they get back home and eat. That's how it is. Yeah. So we need to be transparent. We have spoken so much flamboyant English. We need to bring it down to practical steps, 1, 2, 3. I have heard something about peer review, because if we do not address the environmental issue in Nigeria, it may affect Ghana and other neighboring countries.
So basically, the major thing I want to talk about, because as a public health person, and particularly involved in disease surveillance, and when we talk about surveillance for non-communicable diseases, we cannot avoid looking into all the possible risk factors or causative factors to these diseases, which stem from environment and lifestyle. So we need to look into, in fact, right now, people are even looking into, when we talk about epidemiology today, it's becoming very broad, understanding the distribution and determinants of disease. One of the things people are looking at now is legislative or legal epidemiology. In other words, what policies and laws are in place that could be fostering disease or fostering poor health outcomes, those kind of issues. So another thing that I think we should consider in relation to this methane abatement is really having a surveillance system. For me, that is the most important thing right now, because the opening presenters mentioned how unreliable and how disjointed the available data is, and how incomplete even the most reliable one may be. So we need to have a surveillance system, just as we can beat our chest today to tell you that Nigeria has reliable data on Lassa fever, human cases of Lassa fever. We have reliable data today, domiciled in the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and the various ministries of health. We have that. Can we have reliable data on methane emissions, as well as other related gases that are coming from similar activities and carbon emissions? We need to have this kind of system so that we can properly align it to health outcomes. Because already we've had a number of situations where we are called upon as epidemiologists to look into a community where people are having a lot of respiratory symptoms. And for one reason or the other, we may be notified as far as 3 weeks after the event began, only for us to trace it to a contaminated water source that all of them were swimming in and probably inhaling or swallowing the water, and that water was contaminated from leakages. Some of the leakages, like somebody has mentioned, expiration of materials. Those pipes have expired.
They were not vandalized. They are just leaking from aging and wear and tear. And as a result, water bodies were contaminated and people are coming down with all kinds of symptoms. We have seen situations where we go into a community to investigate unexplained rash, and we think it is chickenpox or monkeypox or any of the pox viruses, and we do all the available tests in the country, all are coming out negative. It is obviously related to something in the environment that we don't understand. And for us in Bayelsa, for instance, we know that it will be related to hydrocarbon issues. So we think that we need a surveillance system that regularly measures, quantifies these emissions in soil, in air, in water, in food materials, and so on and so forth, and helps us to understand the risk. For instance, I haven't heard anybody tell us about those empirical measures of these methane emissions, as well as the safe limits, because we said methane is always in the air to some extent and it will be harmless at that level. At what level is it harmless? At what level is it harmful? And to whom are those levels applied? Is it to children? Is it to pregnant women? Because it will definitely differ, humanly speaking, for health. So these are the details that personally I'm interested in, and I would really like to hear more or be involved in setting up such a surveillance system that will give us more information, more data that will enable us to understand the risk factors
responsible agribusiness. Please, for those of us who might want to go into one form of agriculture or the other, especially those value chains that involve methane emissions, let us think about measures to abate methane. Thank you very much.
All right, I think I will end with these words. I was at COP28 in November and December, and one word that resonated across all the sessions I attended was the need for countries to go back and take actions. We don't need verbal commitments. Every year we'll gather verbal commitment. I will leave you with that word. Actions. What actions are you taking in your ministry, in your organization to ensure this methane abatement? It's of no use coming here, having beautiful discussions, and no action is taken. Go back and take action. Thank you.
The participation has been very wonderful. I want to close in on the note that we all have roles to play in methane emission at the household level, in our businesses, in where we make policies, even in our churches, in our organizations. Everybody has a role. Will we try and use our knowledge at least to enforce methane emission through encouragement of these policies implementation and enforcement? When we do that jointly, at least that change we require should start from all of us, then we can achieve it. Thank you.
Concerted effort, collective effort. That is why I said government do not have answers to all the problems. Get it right at your various levels individually and put together, you can all be getting it right together. Environment does not belong to regulators, it belongs to everybody. So my plea is that we get it right together at the same time. Because if Mr. A is getting it right, Mr. B is not getting it at all, nobody is getting it. So we need to put hands together and ensure all our anthropogenic activities that amount to methane production are reduced to the barest minimum so that going forward we can have a more permissible, a more environment with permissible gas that is within permissible limit for everyone to enjoy. Thank you very much.
The organizers of this program, because it is a very, very important point. Also want to thank the participants for their time that they have spent in listening to what we were saying. And I want to tell us that taking proactive measures in solving problems is always the best. We have come, we have heard, now it is time for us to go back home and put what you have heard into practice for the benefits of our dear society. Thank you.